You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Check us out on social media. Facebook and Instagram, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, and on Twitter at Rainier Ave Radio.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio. It's me, your host, Tony B. Thank you for joining us for our Friday edition of our coronavirus special, where we engage our community, provide information, create awareness and education about the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. We just finished a call with the city council member from Yakima. And again, here at Rainier Avenue Radio, one of the things that we do is have open, honest, and frank conversation. Everyone is entitled to share their opinion about how things are impacting them. One of the things that we have heard is that we're all in this together. And as we can see, there are a variety of different opinions that show that we're all in this a little bit differently. Joining me right now is the executive director of Earshot Jazz Festival, Mr. John Gilbreath. John, how are you?
I'm really good, and I'm grateful to be good. Thank you very much. Hope you're good too.
Under the circumstances, John, I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah, good.
For anyone who doesn't know, first let's start off by telling folks a little bit about Earshot Jazz Festival, who you are and what you do. I talked a little bit earlier about the world-renowned festival that happens every fall, but you're more than welcome to repeat that information and tell us what you do year-round as well.
Yeah, thanks. The festival is just one of our programs. It's the biggest one and the most noticeable on some scales, but the Earshot organization has been around since 1984, and it was started by a journalist, an educator, and a musician to try to put together some sort of infrastructure to support what was a great historical jazz community and a great ongoing jazz community. So it started as a little one-sheet newsletter in 1985. And we still publish the monthly Earshot Jazz magazine, 24 pages. We do 6,000 free copies distributed around the Seattle area every month. And it's news and previews and profiles of Seattle artists. It's only focused on Seattle artists and jazz in this great city. And we also do some other programs assisting artists, doing some education where we can, and concerts throughout the year. And of course, most of this year's spring concerts and summer concerts have been canceled. And, we're going to talk about the fall time, but I think our fall jazz festival, which typically we put up about 50 or 60 concerts over 30 days in October, I think it's going to look real different this year.
All right, well, let's talk about how this has impacted Earshot Jazz Festival. Your staff, again, you said you have concerts. What has been the impact on Earshot Jazz as a whole due to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, it's been great. I think we're lucky in many ways. We still have been able to keep our staff, and we're still doing programs. We're doing a live stream weekly program from Town Hall Seattle downstairs, a very safe environment, but bringing maximum of 4 musicians together and streaming those concerts live 7:30 from Town Hall. And we're still publishing our monthly magazine, working on that. The effect, I think the effect, certainly it's organizational, it's institutional, it's civic, but at its core, and I think we're all dealing with this, the effects are highly personal for us. Just last month seems like a year ago already, and suddenly the future is provisional rather than probable. And I think we're all kind of cut to the core with our own vulnerability, our own risk, and it's really casting, I think, every individual life in a completely different way. And ultimately, optimism is a spectrum even more. But my sincere hope is that we emerge from this as a stronger and more compassionate world of people than we were going into it.
I'm going to get back to that, and of course, I'm going to ask you about the fall as well. But let's talk about what you're doing now. The broadcast from Town Hall. First of all, how do people see? How do they watch? How do they engage with you?
They're free. There's no paywall or anything. They can go to Earshot, to our website, earshot.org. They can also go to townhallseattle.org, or just Google Earshot Jazz or Town Hall and wind up eventually on the page. And there's a link to jump right into the live stream concerts. They start at 7:30 on Saturday nights. And this week it's the group, the Folks Project, which really celebrates the rich jazz and cultural history of Seattle Central District. It's Darius Wilrich on piano, with Evan Flory Barnes on bass and Devon Lewis on drums. And it's a project that also has the stewardship of Dr. James Gore, who has been working hard over the years to really celebrate and hold up the rich cultural tradition of Seattle's Central District. And this, of course, Devon Lewis, the grandson of the great Dave Lewis, Evan Flory Barnes also, and Darius, deep roots that go into the core of Seattle's jazz community. So that's tonight. It's, tomorrow night, Saturday night, 7:30, the Folks Project. And coming up next week, it's the South Sound Tacoma saxophonist Kareem Kandi, who's an Iraqi-American, been around the Seattle area for a while. A great saxophone tone coming out of the Dexter Gordon School. And the next week, it's the vocalist John A. Kendrick, who is on faculty at Cornish College and also still very active in the New York jazz scene. So it's rich. We're so blessed here. Among the things that make a good quality of life for us is this rich cultural community and a community of artists that is just world class across the board. And I could program weekly concerts with Seattle artists for the next 2 years and not have to repeat anything, and they'd all be just world class.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio .world. This is Tony B. My guest is Mr. John Gilbreath, Executive Director of Earshot Jazz. John, tell us how this came about. One day life is as it has always been, and then you suddenly have to retool things. Everyone had to start doing things differently, and then this word virtual became a way of life. How did it happen? How did the relationship come together? How did you decide, well, we got to keep doing something? Just give us some background on how this Saturday night event came to be.
Well, we're like always looking for avenues and ways to present the music, and clearly the times are very difficult. Part of the reason we're able to do this at Town Hall is that they are absolutely assiduous about enforcing the guidelines for safety and for health. There's never more than 8 people in the entire building, including the artists, for one of these concerts. Everybody's temperature is taken on the way in. Stage is marked off for social distancing at least 6 feet. And the green room area where the artists relax before the concert, also everybody gets their own table and their own space there, so that the first thing we had to do was really ensure the safety of all the artists and the people that are participating in the events. And we absolutely wouldn't start until that was absolutely assured. And, certainly there's people like myself. I mean, they don't even let me in there. I'm too old. So The guidelines are being really strictly followed. And I'm not sure if town hall came to us or we went to town hall, but the dialogue uh, was started, and we started taking the roadblocks one at a time and dealing with them and finding a way to actually do something rather than to not do it. You said about the virtual world, it's, when you talk about engagement, there's really nothing like, person to person, and sitting in front of a computer and hearing music out of a 2-inch speaker doesn't really do justice to the whole process. But we found with these live stream concerts, number one, the musicians have been quarantined, they're sequestered as well. So it's been probably 2 months since many of these musicians have actually made music with another human being on the same stage at the same time. People are getting together by Zoom meetings and Zoom jam sessions and things. But so it's, you get to experience the joy of musicians actually working with their peers and creating music in the setting. And you also, and especially with this music that we all love, you get the feeling of spontaneous invention, of spontaneous like tightrope walking, really, when and you can get this. The production values have been great on these concerts because you really get a sense that the musicians are communicating with each other, and there's no safety net. There's sometimes when people are taking a gamble, and it's so beautiful to see the rest of the musicians right there with that person taking the gamble and carrying the whole thing forward. They've really been magical in capturing the spirit of music making.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio .world. It's me, Tony B. My guest is John Gilbreath, Executive Director of Earshot Jazz. John, with your background and your history and your involvement in music, you're a wonderful person to ask this question. What do you see the role of music playing in the lives of folks during times like this?
Arts and culture are so important, especially in times like this, across the board. Music, I talked about this, the experience of this pandemic scare being so palpable on an interior level for each individual. Music and art also goes to that same place, and that's the magic of it, and that's the value of it. And the more uncertain and estranged, I could come up with a bunch of words, but the more crazy the times get, the more I think we need that grounding and that feeling that only art, for some inexplicable reason, can provide. I think of a quote from Amiri Baraka, who said, "Everything we don't understand is explained in art." And so it is that kind of intangible but really palpable value that you get out of it. And another thing that's happening with this phenomenon that kind of pre-existed, but is really manifesting now, is with artists. Artists are in trouble. Artists, especially people working in a gig economy where the gigs have evaporated. That's some real dangerous stuff. And the other thing that's manifesting there with the popularity of YouTube and music sharing and all this stuff is that the artists who actually create the art are at the bottom of the food chain of the system that uses their art and disseminates their art. And it's a sad irony indeed that oftentimes the individual artists are the ones that are not getting paid when money is changing hands between everybody up above them. And the popularity and the availability of music on YouTube and various things is a great, and it makes the world good for the consumer, but unfortunately the artists are getting the short end of this stick, and the times times are difficult already, but they're due to get worse, I think.
You know, John, it seems as that's just a recurring age-old problem. No matter what societal changes happen, is that it seems as though the artists continue to get the short end of the stick. I want to talk with you quickly about this fall. You may not know what's going place. Obviously, this is something impacting the whole world, and Earshot Jazz Festival gets folks from not only all over the country but all over the world that
Yeah.
come to see. Do you know what's going on yet with Earshot Jazz? Is it still too far away to make concrete decisions? Can you tell us what you're thinking?
Well, there's a couple of indicators, and one of the big indicator was yesterday the Monterey Jazz Festival announced that it would, for the first time in its 62-year history, not have a festival this year in Monterey. That was scheduled for September 22, 24. Typically, our festival is scheduled for October 8 or so. I was shooting for, and I had a lot of things booked for October 8 to November 8 this year. And so it really looks like certainly international touring for artists traveling to play dates in the U.S. is probably not going to happen, and it's looking probable that even the U.S. artists and New York artists, where most of the national jazz originates from, I think a lot of those things are not going to happen as well. But we're flexible. That's all we can do. The times are strange, and we're not even certain what next month is going to look like, let alone this fall. But I think the science is saying that we could very easily have another spike in illnesses starting September, going into October, November, and certainly that was the case with the Spanish flu, 1918. The original onslaught was bad, but it was really the second wave of that pandemic that killed so many people around the world. So we have to be really cautious about that. And once again, we certainly wouldn't do anything that would jeopardize anyone's health or well-being. So yeah, I'm flexible, Tony. And all that to say that I can't give you an exact picture of what it's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's probably going to be a lot more things that are happening online. I think, hopefully if we're able to even gather an audience of 50 people, no matter what the restrictions lifted, it still has to be up to the individual people whether they want to go to attend events like this in proximity with other people. So, I think we'll be in bigger venues with smaller audiences and having a lot more space for people to enjoy the music. It's tough to make the money work out, especially if you've got artists touring from New York or from faraway places. With an audience of 50 people, but we'll find a way, and absolutely we'll double down on our commitment to Seattle artists. Typically, Seattle artists make up more than half of the artists on the festival, so there's no shortage of great jazz to be presented by artists who live right here in Seattle.
John, tell us how folks who are listening to you right now can support Earshot Jazz during these difficult times. What can they do? What should they do? What would you like folks to do? How can folks support what you're doing and what Earshot Jazz has brought to our community for decades?
I appreciate your asking that, and certainly through our website, which is just earshot.org. There's a donate button if people want to make donations. That's a beautiful thing. We just had this a couple of weeks ago, the Give Big campaign. And for me, it was so heartwarming to hear from so many people, Tony, and maybe you saw this too, that people are realizing that it is a person-to-person opportunity. And for me, it's just not so much the dollar amount that people were able to give, but the fact that people, made the effort and gave any kind of a donation with a good note of support and everything. So, earshot.org, that's great. I appreciate that. But I would also say, not to shoot myself in the foot, but if I had a truckload of money, I mean, I'd be supporting arts and culture, but man, I would be supporting health and human services. And there's so much right now that needs donations from individuals. We're fine and we're happy to have a donation, but man, I encourage people to help each other, whether it's person to person or relief organizations or healthcare services or anything that we can do to help each other through this crisis is so important.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio. My guest is John Gilbreath, Executive Director of Earshot Jazz. John, I want to personally thank you for Earshot Jazz donation to Rainier Avenue Radio this time. I want to give you the opportunity for final words, and I appreciate, what you're saying, but this is a time for, let's just call it some shameless self-promotion. Tell us again what's going on Saturdays, what you've got going, the artists you've got there. Let's turn some nickels into manhole covers, some shameless self-promotion.
It's Earshot Jazz live at the Forum, and that's the Forum at Town Hall, Seattle, 7:30 Saturday night. Live stream concert with real musicians making music in the same room with each other. It's Darius Wilrich, Evan Flory Barnes, and Devon Lewis this Saturday night at 7:30, the Folks Project. And it's every Saturday night with saxophonist Kareem Candy coming up, vocalist John A. Kendrick, and all sorts of good stuff. So it's Saturday night, 7:30. You can go online, earshot.org or townhallseattle.org and find your way. It's a free stream. Donations are welcome, and we also have a way on those screens all the time to donate directly to the artists as well. We are paying the artists a very respectful artist fee, and over and above that, you can make a donation directly to the artists as well through the screen. So,
all right.
Yeah, Tony, thanks so much. It's a pleasure to talk to you and to see the valuable work that you're doing there at the station. It's incredible. So thank you.
All right, 7:30s, earshotjazz.org coming to you live. Check it out. Go to earshotjazz.org or the Town Hall website, and you can watch for free, and you can donate to the artist. John, keep up the great work. You know what? We got your back here. Whatever you want us to share, whatever you get, make sure you throw it at us so that we can let folks know.
I appreciate it, Tony. Thank you.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. We'll be back right after this.
Here with the Rainier Avenue Radio traffic update. You can listen to us in your car 24/7 anytime by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow drivers. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio traffic update.
If you live in South King County, this message is for you. For the first time, you can choose to respond online, by phone, or by mail. Look, respond today. The census helps shape many different aspects of your community. Everyone needs to be counted. This includes those who live with you temporarily. Your response matters. Complete the census today. Questionnaire is confidential and it's not shared with law enforcement agents. Black and brown children from 0 to 5 were the most undercounted in the 2010 census. South King County, we need you to fill this out. This message is brought to you by the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. Join Rainier Avenue Radio from 5 to midnight for Sunday evening sound sessions. Jazz from the cabinets, from Big Poppy.
That's right, it's time once again for Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy.
Sergio LaCour's Love Lines.
It's Sergio's Love Lines with Sergio LaCour. Go to the phone line, tell him who you're talking to.
Sage Prince and Just My Opinion.
This is Sage, and that's just about gonna do it for the first half of Just My Opinion.
K-Fox Night Beat with Nasty Ness Rodriguez.
The beat of the Fox. K-Fox Night Beat, Nasty Ness.
You know what? You're gonna listen from 5 to midnight. Just turn it on and don't stop. DJ Alibaba, Star Time with Paul
Thanks for
Pearson.
tuning in. My name is Paul Pearson, and this is Star Time.
Sunday evening sound sessions on Rainier Avenue Radio. Trust me, you'll be listening the entire time from 5 to midnight. Sunday evening, your sound session on Rainier Avenue Radio.
The Coronavirus is real. Let's be diligent about washing our hands. Did you know that this virus can live on surfaces for up to 9 days? That's why it's also important to disinfect things that an infected person might touch, like your cell phone. Even if you wash your hands often, when you pull out your phone, those germs go right back on your hands. When's the last time that you cleaned your phone? When the virus is spread by sneezing or coughing, those tiny airborne droplets eventually land on surfaces that you touch with your hands. On average, we touch our face 16 times an hour, which is why it's important to wash your hands and wipe down commonly used surfaces, including your cell phone. This message is a public service of Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not being reprimanded by traffic cops, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.